Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Bully of Skidmore Part 7. This is the story of Ken Rex McElroy. When we last left off, we had talked about how social services had removed Trina McLeod from Ken McElroy's residence and put her into foster care, which they would later put her in full custody of her grandmother. And social services was putting a charge on Ken Rex McElroy for child molestation for the raping of Trina McLeod with a shotgun. And they would take the case to trial in Nottoway County, and the magistrate that they appointed there would actually put about 8 or 9 child molestation charges against Ken Rex McElroy. And the entire case was very heavily based off of the testimony of Trina McLeod. And unbeknownst to them at this point in time, Trina McLeod, while living with her grandmother, would actually call Ken Rex McElroy to come pick her up. And at that point, McElroy would contact his lawyer, Richard McFadden, and ask if he married Trina, could he be better in this case because she couldn't testify against her husband. Richard McFadden would advise McElroy and tell him, yes, it is true that you cannot testify against your husband if you are married. But keep in mind there's a loophole to this law that even though she can't testify against you, she can also sit and talk about crimes you have committed. But Ken McElroy, not listening to the advice of his lawyer, would actually go get a divorce with his previous wife, Sharon, and then go and approach Trina's mother and ask for consent to marry 15-year-old Trina McLeod. And at the time, he was about 41 years old, where Trina McLeod was 15. She would also have to sign a contract in front of McFadden that she could not testify or talk about any crimes that Ken Rex McElroy had committed. And when the trial proceeded, she couldn't testify. All the testimony that they had based this trial on, they had nothing. So, therefore, once again, Ken Rex McElroy would actually walk away from this case. And this would kind of be a reoccurring pattern. Ken Rex McElroy in the next 4 years would actually be taken to court a total of 19 different times. And all of these times, it would be for very serious felony charges. And every single time, either the people that would go to court against him would either change their story, drop the charges, or even go missing. And at one point, an officer by the name of Stratton would actually begin working in Skidmore. And upon entering there, his senior officer would tell him, by no means should you ever trust Ken Rex McElroy, and would even go and tell him he is a bully, a thief, and is a very trigger-happy person and is not afraid to use a shotgun. So by no means should you ever turn your back on Ken Rex McElroy. Shortly after being told this, Stratton would actually be on his post, and he would actually see Ken Rex McElroy driving past him in his green Dodge pickup truck. And on this particular day, McElroy would actually have a truck full of pigs in the back of his truck. So Stratton, knowing that he was a local thief, would actually turn on his lights and pull him over. And at which point Stratton would approach Ken McElroy's truck and would ask him, "Are those pigs in the back of your truck stolen?" To which Ken McElroy would simply take his shotgun off of his gun rack and point it at Stratton. At this point, Stratton did not want to get shot by McElroy, and if he pulled out his sidearm, he knew that he would be shot. So he slowly backed away, got into his squad car, and drove off. In July of 1976, Farmer Romaine Henry would be the next person that would have to deal with Ken Rex McElroy. And on this particular day, Romaine Henry would come home, and after returning home, his son would actually tell them that there was a person near the residence of their farm, and he was driving around in a green Dodge pickup truck firing a shotgun. To which Henry knew well enough that the only person that drove a green Dodge pickup truck was Ken Rex McElroy. So he reluctantly got into his truck and drove over where his son had told him that he had heard the noise. Upon approaching the truck, he would drive up, and Ken Rex McElroy would see him, would actually get out of the truck with a shotgun in hand. And when he approached Henry's truck, he would hold the shotgun at his face and ask him, "Have you been over my property?" To which Henry would actually deny these claims, and Ken McElroy would actually shoot Henry in the stomach. And he would go to shoot a second time, and when he went to shoot a second time, Henry would actually duck, and this time the bullet would actually graze and cut his face. And McElroy would try to shoot a third time, but the gun would actually jam, so Ken would back up and try to fix his gun. At this point, it gave Henry enough brake to actually start his truck and go flying down the road to his home. McElroy would actually jump into his green pickup truck and begin chasing Henry down the road. And after so much time, he would actually stop chasing him, turn around, and go back to Skidmore. When Henry would go to his property, he would tell his wife what had happened, and she would actually drive him to the hospital. And they would have to perform surgery on Henry to remove the bullets from his stomach and clear up and stitch up his stomach and face. At which point they would try to press charges against Ken McElroy for attempted murder or feloniously assaulting Romaine Henry. And when the police would go and talk to the other witnesses who had been in that area around that time, they would all confirm they had saw Ken McElroy's truck right around the time of the assault, which would go and confirm the story between Henry and his wife. But when they approached Ken McElroy, he would say that he was never there. As before, McElroy would contact McFadden, and McFadden would get back to work like he normally would. And he would go in and he would postpone the trial till a year later, but still allow Ken Rex McElroy to walk free on bail as long as he behaved himself, which we all know he never did. And during this time, he would just continue the bullying of not just Henry, but at the same time, he would also bully and stalk the people that were going to testify against him. So by the time that that court proceeding took place, everyone would either change their story or just not remember anything, as it had been before with the girls that he had been romantically involved with that would press charges against him. It was the same exact thing. And because everyone had changed all of their stories, McFadden would make a statement in court that because their stories kept changing and no one stuck to the original story that they testified against, that none of their statements could be credible. So, once again, Ken Rex McElroy would walk free from that trial. And it made a lot of people in Skidmore wonder, how is it possible that a man like Ken Rex McElroy could commit these very heinous, borderline murder type felony charges and still walk free? And a lot of people of Skidmore not only lost faith in the system, but they literally felt abandoned by the police officers sworn to protect them. Which brings us to the next big event that would actually put Skidmore to a boiling